Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Deserts to Mountaintops. I am so happy you're here. I am your host, Jess Buchanan. I am also the founder of Soul Speak Press, which is a non-traditional boutique publishing house for women who've been through something, now they know something, and they want to teach us something. And so today I am joined by another contributing author to the second volume of Deserts to Mountaintops. Our collective, no, sorry, that's the first volume. Choosing Our Healing Through Radical Self-Acceptance. It's been a long week, people. And I'm joined here with Amie Woeber. Welcome.
Hi, nice to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you tell us a little bit, first of all, tell us what your chapter's titled, and then talk to us a little bit about your desert moment in terms of, recognizing that it's not just like a moment, right? It can span an entire lifetime. But talk to us a little bit about what you wrote about, and then take us on that journey to how you got to the mountaintop and how you would identify that and how you would articulate that.
So, the name of my chapter is Finding My Voice in Mexico. And it talks about the crippling anxiety that I was dealing with living in California during COVID, during the quarantines, during lockdown, and how that essentially ruled my life in that I truly believed I don't know that dying is the right term, but I did feel like I had very few options. I was completely alone. My desert was this prison that I created. It was also, I mean, I also really was alone. It was
Mm.
quarantine, it was the
Yeah.
pandemic, we weren't talking to people. We were isolating, and I didn't know anyone in California. I ended up out there through a series of things that just happened. And so the desert, that moment, I think, was the year and a half that I was there, and just felt so completely alone, and just no one around. And that led to making some very poor decisions on people that I kept in my life. One was a man that I started dating, and then we became friends, but and then a group of other women that weren't very good to me, and quite a few things. And so that was I think the desert moment was really when I just realized I had absolutely nothing, no one out there, even after the border started reopening, and things started reopening. We were emerging back into reality again. And the mountaintop was after I had a pretty terrible night, screaming my heart out, just in pure frustration. I just simply couldn't take it anymore when I was in Mexico, and finally asked to be set free, and finally left California and moved back to what is home, which is Washington, D.C.
So, I mean, there are lots of facets of your story that I find really compelling and interesting, but addressing this, I think so many people globally can identify with that deep, deep, dark loneliness that was experienced during the pandemic. And I've read, stories and articles about it, but I've yet to read much in the memoir space about COVID. I'm sure things will be coming out. Um, but I think that it's definitely a facet of your story that's going to connect with a lot of people. Do you have people in your network who it resonates with, who you've had conversations with, in post COVID where they have experienced similar things?
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people that have read my story. I think we're still a little too close to COVID in
Mhm.
the pandemic, in the quarantines, to really be able to look back and say, wow, that really did some damage. I will say this, the quarantines and the pandemic were one part. The anxiety that I was battling started long ago.
Okay.
I talk about in the story the anxious attachment
Mhm.
style of when it comes to relationships. I referenced the book Attached, that really helped a lot with me. A lot of these things were already there. This anxiety, this people pleasing, this outside validation, feeling, I was an extrovert. I am an extrovert. I like being out and about. And so when all that was taken away, it was, who am I? And then the anxiety of, oh my gosh, I don't have anyone, really took over. The pandemic and telling me I can't go outside and I can't talk to people did not help that. But all of
Mhm.
those symptoms, all of those things, those contributors were there. It was when everything was stripped away and I finally had to sit in my lonely apartment by myself and just think. That was really when everything kind of came to head. And I started realizing, I'm really locked in this prison of anxiety, that everything that I do is wrong. It's going to push somebody away. People aren't going to like me. I was having a lot of issues, professionally. I was worried about my program getting shut down. I was worried about how I was going to live. I was worried about people getting sick. And it just became reality. I
Mhm.
genuinely thought these things were happening. I mean, I believe them that they were happening as real as the sun was setting
Mhm.
and going, and the sun was rising and setting every day. And so finally, being able to not only take myself out of that situation, but also talk about it
Mhm.
and talk to a therapist and start talking to other people, and realizing all of us were alone. We were all sitting in, we were all going through, I wasn't the only one going through the pandemic. Everybody was going through that, and
Mhm.
trying to connect with people better. I also talk about in the book, I realized at some point I really probably should have sought treatment for
Mhm.
exhaustion and anxiety and whatnot. And I was too afraid to do so. I didn't want to take time off of work. I didn't want my coworkers to know. I didn't want my family to know. And that was really what led to my meltdown, my near breakdown in Mexico. That night was the fact that I was trying to do it myself, and I was self-medicating in ways I shouldn't have,
Mhm.
whether it was binge watching TV and not getting out and doing stuff, or I was drinking that night. And so, really getting freeing myself from that prison, I was taking the wrong path. And if I had just, you know, gotten help, talked to people, let people in my desert with me,
Mhm.
let people,
Mhm.
I think I would have managed much better. And so I hope that when people are reading that, if they're going through something similar, I hope that they see that, they think to themselves, I'm not the only one going through this, and they see that there's probably other people going through the same things.
It's interesting to me that, like, even at that period of time that you would feel that saying, "Hey, I'm exhausted, I'm dealing with anxiety here," would still feel stigmatized.
Hmm.
We were
Hmm.
in the depths of, like, a mental health crisis on top of, um,
Hmm.
a pandemic.
Hmm.
Do you feel like mental health is becoming more destigmatized post-COVID?
I do think it is. I think that we've been able to see, obviously our first responders. I have family members and friends that are nurses, and that were going through really, really tough times as well because they were in the thick of it. I think what's unfortunate, and what continues to be unfortunate, is that it takes a group of people to look backwards and go, "Oh, wow, we were all going through this. We need to talk about this more."
Mhm.
And not looking at it right now in the moment as it's happening today. And I don't think we're there yet when it comes to mental health. We can always look back and go, yeah, I was really depressed. I wish I had gotten help, or I wish I had talked to more people about it. And then other people say, yeah, me too. Whether it's, depression from a global pandemic to, don't forget there's also some terrible things that were happening in America.
Mhm.
At the time there was a lot of, fighting and
Mhm.
discord, with the riots and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so, but to be able to look at each other today and say, "Are you okay?
Mhm.
Don't tell me you're fine. Are
Mhm.
you actually okay right now, today? Not yesterday, not a couple months ago, not postpartum depression or something like that. Are you okay today?" And I still don't think that we're there yet. I think
Mhm.
people are still, and myself included, are still going, "I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay," and
Mhm.
we're not. It's the world is still a scary place, even
Yeah.
though the pandemic is over.
What do you think it's gonna take to get to that point then?
I think continuing to talk. Unfortunately, I really do think that our professional lives play a huge role. At least with me. I'm a single person. I don't have kids, so my priority focus is myself and my dog,
Mhm.
and so in my professional life. And so I think I think one of the many good things that the pandemic did and COVID did with the quarantines was when we went to virtual and everybody started working from home, you
Mhm.
kind of got this glimpse of home life.
Mhm.
Kids now are, hanging out on Zoom with their
Mhm.
parents, and it's not weird anymore. And so I think, bringing sort of fusing that together, that there isn't just this, oh, I'm this professional during the day, and then I'm, whoever I am, outside of that. I hope that continues to grow. But I do think that more need I do think that more needs to be done as far as, work-life balance, mental health leave, being able to say, look, I need to take a couple days off for my personal health. I'm going through some
Right.
things,
Yeah.
battling depression, or I'm having, a panic episode. The same way I can get sick days for
Mhm.
when I have COVID, when I
Mhm.
have a cold. I actually wrote a piece talking about years ago, before I wrote the book, about why we should start treating depression similar to the common cold as
Mhm.
well. Same idea that, sometimes you don't feel very good and you just need a day. And
Yeah.
if you have that sick leave, use it. Take a
Yeah.
day, take 2 days, take 3 days, take a week.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I remember a couple of years ago, it was probably, no, it was more than that. It was like 10 years ago. Um, we were in Sweden because my husband's from Sweden, and we were talking to a friend who had just like, I don't know, I think he was like on a leave, like a mental health leave
Hmm.
for like months. And I
Hmm.
was like, I've never heard of that before. And he goes, well, what do you do when you get burned out? And I just looked at him and I burst out laughing. I said,
American.
we're American. We don't get burned out. Like,
Yeah.
like we're not
Yeah.
allowed to do that. And he was
Right.
like, it was just such a foreign concept to him. And I still chuckle when I think about that because it's really sad reality,
Mhm.
even still. Um, okay, so you alluded then a little bit to your mountaintop,
Mhm.
but then tell us a little bit more about that.
So I got into a situation, a friendship of sorts, but it was certainly not with Simon, who I talk quite a bit about in the book. Simon isn't the reason I was going through anxiety. He stayed in my life way too long,
Hmm.
and I became terrified of speaking up and, saying, hey, I don't like the way you treat me, or I don't like this, or I don't like that, because some things that had happened, that he walked out on me once, and so I was terrified about being alone again, and so I never spoke up. I could not speak. I didn't have a voice, and it wasn't just with him. It was with lots of other people. But uh, I something happened. Then one night he spoke to me the wrong way and pushed me too much, and I just snapped and I screamed. I screamed out everything over the year, that I had been frustrated with, some things that he did to me to make me feel unsafe, and some other traumatic events that happened that I talk about in the story. But I just started screaming and found myself almost getting arrested by the authorities. And that was very eye-opening because I am not someone who has trouble with the law. I've never even gotten so much as a detention in my life. So it was very out of character for me,
Hmm.
and it really scared me. And so, and my sisters got involved. And the next morning, my mom called me and said, because they all knew that this is
Yeah.
bad. This is not our daughter. This is not our
Yeah, this
sister,
is not normal. Yeah.
not Amie. And and so that was finally, my mom called me, as I was standing on a literal mountaintop, in
Mhm.
Mexico somewhere. We were sightseeing, and it was everything I could do to just hold it together. I was barely holding it together. I wanted to go back to California, and Simon wouldn't let us. And she said, "Are you okay?" And that was,
Mhm.
um, I might actually start tearing up a little bit. That was the first time I finally said, no, I'm
Mhm.
not okay.
Mhm.
Um, I can't do this anymore. I can't be alone anymore. And that's when I asked, can I come home for a couple weeks? Can I come home, in Florida, where my mom lives? And of course she said, she's my mom. Of course she said
Mhm.
yes. And that's when I got myself and my dog on a plane and got out of there and
Yeah.
slowly my way back to Washington, D.C. and where I belong and where I'm happiest. And I have not stopped talking since. I found my voice that night. And I don't see how I don't think I'll ever lose it again. I don't.
Well, it reminds me of that saying that it takes a breakdown to get to the breakthrough.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that sounds exactly like what that was like. So for something so personal, what's it like to write about that? Especially because you're
Listen,
a
it was, I
professional.
think that, yeah, it was hard to live it. It
Hmm.
was difficult to write about it. It is terrifying putting it out,
Hmm.
putting it out there. I mean, absolutely terrifying. You know,
Hmm.
my closest friends, my family knew all this story. I wasn't embarrassed about that. I remember when I was writing it, because I've written before, and I used to blog when I traveled, and I've published pieces professionally and personally and whatnot. And that's always scary when you put yourself out there,
Sure.
even when you've been working in the field for 20 some odd years and you're writing about something that backwards and forwards. It's still, I'm not used to putting myself out there for criticism and people that just genuinely want to be ugly and mean. I mean, they're
Hmm.
just looking for people to be ugly and mean too.
Hmm.
And, obviously, I talk a lot about in the story, I need, outside validation and approval. And so putting myself out there and not getting that was really, really terrifying. But I kept thinking, I knew that this was a good story. I was very proud of the words that came out of me. I'm very proud of the accomplishment in getting through that. I'm prouder of the way I was able to write it in the final product. What was hardest was thinking about the people who were going to read it.
Hmm.
It's one thing, my mom, my sisters, my family members to know this story. I had to really think about it. Do I really want a future client reading about the time I
Hmm.
almost had a mental breakdown?
Hmm.
And some of the sexual violence that happens in the beginning. I mean, those are some really personal things. Like, do I want a future employer reading about that?
Hmm.
And thankfully, I've always been lucky to be surrounded by very, very powerful, empowering, professional women who are also my friends, and sent it to a handful of them and said, is this the stupidest thing I've ever done? I'm proud of this story, but am I going to be shooting myself in the foot professionally and personally? And all three of them said, absolutely not. This is a great story. It needs to be told. It takes a lot of courage. Put it out there. And so that was kind of that was that there were those that was my first board of directors that gave me the first approval. My mom and my sisters, of course, were the second approval.
Hmm.
um and then we'll see. I've heard, the whole book. I mean, I think, I very selfishly and self-centeredly, I was solely focused on my story and getting my story out. And now the people that I've asked to go buy the book and then read the other stories are now coming to me about the other stories that they're finding moving. And they've all said, similar comments of, I wish you had all known that you were going through these things at the same time, instead of, thinking we were all alone, dealing with this, seeing this together, seeing this group of people that, hey, listen, we're all going through something. Maybe talk to your friends. You don't need to hide it. I think has been some of the nicest feedback that I've gotten, and really positive for men and women.
That's
So,
awesome. Yeah,
yep.
that's great. Okay, well, what's next for you?
I'm going to, I think probably writing some more short stories is my next bet. I want to continue. I definitely want to continue writing some of the things that have happened. I do want to use this as a platform to get employers and professional people talking about how are we dealing with mental health.
Mhm.
Not just more leave. Thanks for, I mean, sure, let's give more mental health leave, more sick leave, more great, but also, making sure that employees feel protected, and their privacy is protected, when they do this. I mean, I can't imagine how hard it must be to have to go to your employer and say, hey, listen, I need to take 30 days off, or, substance abuse, or, something along those lines. When it was, I, it was, it was hard enough thinking about what would I tell them is wrong, right? I didn't have,
Right.
I remember at one point in time thinking to myself, I wish I had a drink. I wish I had an actual drinking problem. Like, I wish I had a drug problem. I wish I had a drinking problem so I could say, oh, well, I need to go to treatment
Yeah.
because I need to fix this problem. Because I didn't think anxiety was a big enough problem. It was like, come on, cheer up, boo hoo.
Mhm.
And so I really want to keep talking about this. I think that I personally, up until this, I never really had issues with anxiety. And to be perfectly frank, I was somewhat judgmental about people that did, about just stop worrying. Why are you worrying so much? This is silly. You're just worrying yourself crazy. And now that I've dealt with it myself and realized, you have to be very thoughtful for people like me that have dealt with anxiety, really not let those negative voices just take off. I mean, I talk about it in the book. It was just a ticker tape. I could not shut it off
Mm.
all day, every day, telling me, what are you going to do? What are you going to do for money? How are you going to work? What if mom gets sick? Who could take care of Cotter? What if you get sick? What's going to happen? What if they shut down the program? I mean, it was just, even when I was watching TV or I'm having a conversation, it was just on in the background. And so having really understanding that and being able to help other people kind of shut that down, shut the tape down, and not let it become, I talk about this, that I thought that was real. That became my intuition. I started making decisions based
Yeah.
on anxiety. And that's the worst place you can make decisions.
Mhm.
It made me probably not a fun person to deal with either. I was very defensive. I was very, I was constantly coming from a place of defense. So I'm sure that wasn't pleasant sometimes. But yeah, and then that's as far as the book, but it's an ongoing process. Like I said, I'm in a little bit of a life transition right now, and I'm actively trying to stay positive and not let the tape start going of what if
Yeah.
this doesn't work out,
Mm.
it's we talked about this before, but the healing process is always, it's always ongoing.
Yeah.
It's happening. And it takes a lot of work to stay happy sometimes.
Like a
It
full-time job.
it's a full-time job. Like you really, really, really have to put a lot of effort into, gratitude journals and meditating and exercising and, being
Yeah.
grateful, and which is really sad. I wish that was the easy part. And the worrying part was, hey, I should really worry about retirement someday.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
so yeah. But and this has just been, a really fantastic experience meeting all these other women and seeing, not even just hearing their stories, but talking about their processes and how they write and what people are going to do next. And it was hard for me to start talking about the book. I've had a hard time. I'm not big on advertising myself.
Mhm.
And so watching other people, do all these big social media posts and really put themselves out there, I'm like, wow, okay, I need to step up my game a little bit here. So it's been slow going. I'm not natural. I like being the guy behind the guy behind the guy
Mhm.
behind the guy. That's professionally speaking,
Yeah.
that's usually who I am. So it's hard being the guy or the girl.
Well, the book promotion piece is just, it's a long game. So there's no
Yeah,
hurry. It's
yeah,
gonna be
yeah.
there.
And that's the greatest thing, that's the greatest thing about books, right? It's always going to be out there now. In
Mhm.
20 years, somebody could be picking this up and reading it in
Yep.
school or something, it's there. It never changes now. It's part of the ether.
Mhm.
And it was pretty cool seeing, seeing my name on the back and having people reach out to me now that, hey, I got your book, and
Mhm.
wow.
Yeah.
And that is kind of hard too, because people want to talk to me about it. I'm like, oh no, 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 no. I don't want to, just read the story.
We're not doing a Q&A.
No, yeah, like because I'm also I very much I truly try to live in the present. And so, these things happened years ago. I got through it. I'm alive. I'm happy now. Let's move on. And so kind of it's still coming up in the present is still that's been kind of a thing that
Mhm.
I'm
It's
deal with
interesting.
too. How do I not end up right back in that spot because
Mhm.
people are still talking about it 5, 10, 20, 15, 30 years later. And but I put it out there for a reason so people can keep talking about it. So
Awesome. Well, I, for one, am grateful that you took the challenge on and you decided to make this contribution. There are so many resonances available in your story. So do you want to advertise how people can connect with you or not?
Yes, From Deserts to Mountaintops is available on Amazon. You can purchase it. It is the second volume. You can also email me at AMIE at ajwconsultingllc.com, which is my little company I have started, and that I did before that. If you're looking for that, you can follow me on social media on Instagram at The Amazing Ames. And yeah, that's
Perfect.
you. And soon, Politics and Prose at the Wharf will be selling it. So
Yeah, that's
get
exciting.
copies for anyone local in Washington, D.C.
Love
So
it. So cool. You should do a book signing there.
I have a couple ideas for, yeah. So we're gonna
Awesome.
be book signings and hopefully somewhere in Southwest, a couple other places in Southwest, since that's where home is now. So
Well, bravo.
again,
That's
yep.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Amy.
Great. Oh, awesome. Thank you.